Hello and welcome to the Bubbling Up Podcast, a show about the people and places of Hot Springs, South Dakota, and the Southern Black Hills. I'm your host, Justin Gosman, and this show is coordinated through the Hot Springs Area Chamber of Commerce. Bubble Up. The Cambridge Dictionary defines bubble up as to rise to the surface or to become obvious. And that's why this show came about. I want the stories behind our fascinating small South Dakota town to rise to the surface and be heard. Hot Springs, South Dakota, population 3,460 today, is a community in the southwestern corner of South Dakota, about 50 miles south of Mount Rushmore. Founded in 1890, we got our name from, you guessed it, naturally warm mineral springs that bubble up from underground. The stories seem endless, and it's my hope that this show will enlighten not only the fellow residents of and potential visitors to Hot Springs as to the intriguing history of our community, but also to its ongoing inner workings today, the stories behind our local businesses, nonprofit organizations, and events, the voices that make a community what it is, and that are working to make it what it can be. I hope you'll join me on this journey. So how are you doing this morning, Barb?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good, good. We are sitting down with Barbara Walter, who is a nominee for Citizen of the Year this year. So congratulations, Barb.
Thank you.
I'm very excited to be able to sit down with you this morning because we have a lot to talk about in terms of everything that you do in the community. But one of the things that we like to do on this podcast is first off talk a little bit about how each of the people that we're talking to got to Hot Springs, because we all have our own unique story of how we got here. Or in my case, I didn't have much of a choice. I was basically a baby when I came here. So, but how did you come to Hot Springs? What brought you here to the area?
Well, my first time in South Dakota was in July of 1999. Our church senior high youth group was going on a mission trip to Oglala on Pine Ridge Reservation. And we spent a week here, and we had a work project, and then we also did a daycare in Pine Ridge. And due to the tornado that hit Oglala in June of that year, we could not use the Loneman School as our starting point and where we were sleeping. So they had moved us to Wolf Creek, but we had our work project in Oglala. And in our work project, we painted the exterior of one of the residents in Oglala. Well, we exchanged contact info, and throughout the years, I stayed in touch with them. And so when I got ready to consider retiring at 62, and I'd stayed in touch with them all this time. And during the years, I had a hard time contacting them. So I was given an aunt's work phone number. So I was able to use that phone number to stay close touch. And so when I considered retiring and going on Social Security at 62, I contacted her and I said, my son's wanting to go back to California. He was raised there from 7 months till he was 19. And so I contacted this person and I said, I'm considering moving to South Dakota. And I had come back in 2003, stayed with them on the res. And I said, I will be by myself, so where's the safest place to live? And where's the closest place so that it's convenient to visit? And they instantly, without hesitation, said Hot Springs.
Wow.
So when I started researching 5 different cities, Chadron, Nebraska, Rapid City, and a few other, and Hot Springs, I instantly fell in love with the Evans Hotel because our first duty station, when my husband first went in the Marine Corps, was in Scotland, and the Evans Hotel reminded me of the castle.
That is so cool.
That's how I came, and then I was really fortunate and happy that the town was about the same size as the town I lived in Upper. Our whole county was only 20,000.
Oh, wow.
You know.
Yeah.
And so finding out it was the county seat and everything was right here, convenient and small.
Yeah.
You know.
It checked all the boxes.
Yeah, I checked all the boxes, and that's how I got to Hot Springs.
Wonderful.
Another thing was at a restaurant back home in Ohio. I was in there having breakfast, and I was the director of our Eastern Woodland powwow back in Ohio. And I had the signs up, and the waitress came over and said, "There's a gentleman at the counter that wants to talk to you about the powwow." And so I go over, and he goes, "I hear you're moving to South Dakota. Where are you going?" And I told him Hot Springs, and he said instantly, without hesitation, and I had a brace on that time on my leg, and he said, "You get in the Evans Plunge, and you won't be wearing that brace very long." So once I moved here and moved to the Evans, I was on a lot of pain medicine and everything. I started drinking the water at Kidney Springs because I thought, what's all people doing, you know?
Yeah. Well, you see them go by with the big jugs of water.
And so I started drinking that water in December of 12, after we got here. By August, and that's all I was drinking, you know, besides coffee and, you know, other stuff. But by August of 13, I was off all that pain medicine.
Wow.
And by August of that following year, I was no longer wearing a brace.
Oh, wow.
Because of the plunge, because I was going every day and drinking the water.
Yeah.
You know, so
wow.
I was just more or less flabbergasted that what that guy said, because I had never heard of Evans Plunge.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, but by that time I'd already decided to, because it was that year in August was when we had the powwow, and then we set a date, and we told our grandkids, because they were out of school by then, and we said, we're leaving at this such and such a date.
Yeah.
If you want to go west with us, you know.
Yeah.
I said, you know, you're welcome to come, but they wanted to stay in Ohio, so
that's fair.
that's where they're at.
That's fair. So when you moved to Hot Springs, what was the first thing you got involved with in the community? Do you remember?
Evans Plunge.
It was Evans Plunge?
It was Evans Plunge. I was at the Arts and Craft Festival, and at that time, a group, it was still owned by the previous owners.
Right.
And there was a group at the Arts and Craft Festival, the Black Hills Healing Water Group.
Yeah. Yep.
And they were wanting people to sign up to join their group in helping to, I would say, advance the knowledge of the plunge more or less.
Yeah.
You know? And so I thought, well, the best way to get to know people is to get involved. You know? And so I signed up for that, and they contacted me, and I joined that. And I think the next thing that I did was I joined the auxiliary, American Legion Auxiliary.
Yes.
You know.
Yep. You've been involved with them for a long time now.
Yes, since that time.
It's going on almost, how many years now? That would have been, if that was 2012, 13, that would be almost 6 years. Wow. So, and then with the American Legion Auxiliary, obviously now you hold much higher positions in there.
Right.
Currently, You're the State Department chaplain of the auxiliary, you know, and you've really pushed to advocate for veterans.
Right.
Now, has that been a lifelong thing, or is that something that you were inspired to do coming to Hot Springs, which is known so often as the veterans town?
Well, my dad was in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
My husband was in from 1970 to 1989,
Okay.
and he was in the Marine, like I said before, was in the Marine Corps. We were stationed at Camp Pendleton,
Mhm.
29 Palms, and his first duty station was in Scotland.
Oh, right.
And that's where my son was born. So, so I've been an advocate for veterans and active
military.
duty. And if I this past summer, I was sitting up at the VA Medical Center outside of the canteen and having lunch, and the person next to me asked me if I was a veteran, and I said, well, I said, I come up here, I said, I go to Ellsworth Air Force Base, or I come up here when I need a military fixed atmosphere.
You need to get that fixed.
Being in the active duty,
Yeah.
you know, as a dependent for so long. And
Right. You
I-
just get used to that lifestyle and that mentality.
Yeah.
So you're not only involved with the auxiliary and the Evans Plunge, but you're now involved in many different community organizations and committees, not only here in Hot Springs, but kind of across the Black Hills. Tell us a little bit about some of the other efforts that you've been involved in.
Well, I'm involved in the Dakota region of the Red Cross,
Mm-hmm.
and locally through them, I am the direct contact person when there's home fires.
Mm-hmm.
That I help do the paperwork and provide them with financial assistance through the Red
Oh, wow.
Cross. You know, and based on, you know, if
Yeah.
they're totally out of their home for a while and stuff like that. And I am actually on the disaster action team.
Mm-hmm.
I also have been classified as the driver of one of the Red Cross vehicles.
Very cool.
You know, due to medical issues that I have in a lot of the state, you know,
Mhm.
across the United States or deploy overseas and
Yeah.
stuff like that, I'm kind of limited to what I can
Right.
do when there maybe not be electricity.
Right.
You know.
And then more locally, you've been involved as well with Keep Hot Springs Beautiful.
Right, I still am.
Yeah.
And I help there when we have we changed the name of our electronical thing because we can no longer take TVs.
Yeah, it
and-
used to be the electronics recycling event, and
Yeah,
now
and
it's
more,
it's like the super recycling event
Yeah,
or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Now you do those are done twice a year, right?
Yes,
Once in the
yeah.
spring, once in the fall,
Right.
and those are good because those allow locals to have an opportunity to recycle some of those types of goods that are a little bit bigger.
Right.
That you couldn't just, it's not like it's something that you could just plop into the recycling bin out back.
Yeah, the last thing that they stopped taking was TVs
Mhm.
and computer monitors.
Yeah.
You know, but at that time that the Pacific Recycling had stopped taking those, we contacted the city,
Mhm.
and they can drop the TVs and stuff off on the cleanup weeks
Oh, okay.
for the city. So
Oh, nice.
there's still a venue
Okay.
to get rid of them.
Good, good.
know.
Very good. And then you're involved, like I said, in a number of other committees. You're on the Parks and Rec Committee with the city.
Well, I'm not on the Parks and Rec
But
committee.
you attend them.
I attend the meetings. I attend the meetings because I am involved with the disc golf.
Well, I was going to get to that. Because that's
You know?
another big thing that you've been involved in is
Yes.
promoting and advocating for bringing disc golf to more
Right.
prominence in the community.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how that came about. Have you always been interested in disc golf, or is
Well,
it a new hobby? Or
Back in Ohio, everything starts from basically in Ohio.
Uh-huh.
My neighbor was teaching their their whole family plays disc golf.
Yeah.
The father started, and then he taught on
Yeah.
down. And he now has designed and put in the disc golf courses back home in our hometown.
Okay.
And when I left, they had just finished putting in one.
Yeah.
And then a couple years later, when I went back home, they now have two.
Yeah.
And the two joined together, but it's across the
Okay.
Sandusky River.
Oh, wow. That's
so
cool.
you throw the disc across the river. It's a little
Wow.
wider
Uh-huh.
than our river.
Than Fall River, yeah. Just
You know?
just by a little bit.
Yeah. And so when I moved here, I mentioned disc golf, and people just didn't seem to know anything about it.
Yeah.
You know, and my main goal for disc golf was to have world and international play. And the reason for that is that I wanted to help, as I was on some of them other committees, was
Mhm.
on the, during our community involvement, engagement things. I was on a couple of those committees.
Yep.
One was business and economics, and the other one was housing.
Mhm.
And I was wanting disc golf to help promote the economic development of Hot Springs,
Yeah.
like it helped. After leaving Upper Sandusky and talking with Jeff and them through the years, they had a world tournament in the town next to us
Oh,
back
wow.
in Ohio.
Yeah.
And when they play world and international play with disc golf, those players are in the area for a good 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And our town alone made almost $1 million
Wow.
by the time they did the lodging. And with that many people that come,
Mhm.
you know, in those tournaments, I wanted to see that happen here.
Mhm.
And I thought it would be great if people didn't seem to know about the course or about the actual sport. And Jeff had Googled and emailed me and said, at that time, back in 14, there was 62 disc golf courses in South Dakota
Mhm.
alone.
Yeah.
You know, which was amazing to me when nobody knows about it.
Right.
You know, and I found out there was a course in Angostura.
There is.
It's a 9-hole course down there, and it's right below the lookout
Yep.
tower there at that marina.
Yep.
And so I thought it would be great. I want to have a junior high South Dakota State League.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, the courses have to be regulation, which
Right.
is an 18-hole course.
Right.
But I checked with Rapid City because they have courses up there. And sometimes if they have to play on a 9-hole course, they use travel baskets to make the 18.
Ah. Nice.
You know, so there's ways to
make it work.
do that, but we want to make an 18-hole,
That would be
course.
great.
And-
That would be fantastic.
and that's in the process.
Very cool. So, with you being nominated for Citizen of the Year, a lot of people may not know how that works. And essentially, the way the Citizen of the Year award works is that anyone in the community can nominate someone. And so you were nominated by someone in the community anonymously who submits that to the chamber. And then anybody can nominate, but the voting is done by members of the Chamber of Commerce. Now that includes not only the local businesses, but also individual members. Because we do have, like you're an individual member of the chamber. And so everyone who's a member of the chamber gets to vote, and then the award is given at our annual meeting. But what it's intended to do is to not just recognize the achievements of that individual, but to also celebrate kind of the spirit of the community. And part of that, to me, is looking at inspirational people in the community. And so thinking about inspirational people, I'm wondering, was there an inspirational person in your life who, you would say they should be the Citizen of the Year of wherever they're from?
First person comes to mind is my grandmother.
Yeah.
My dad's mom.
Yeah.
It seems like we live like right next door,
Yeah.
which probably makes it a much easier thing. My sisters always said I was her pet, like a teacher's pet.
Yeah.
But I was the second oldest of 7 of us kids, and so I was kind of the motherly type. I
Yeah.
always have felt a drawing to be a service and a help to others. I don't, a lot of times don't help myself, because I feel like it's being selfish.
No.
But
Not at all.
people have told me that.
No.
You got to take care of yourself first before you can take care of others. So I'm trying to learn that still.
Yeah.
But
And
I
so you would
like
say,
to help.
yeah. So you'd say your grandma was your most inspirational person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people would say the same about their grandmothers, because they make if you have a good grandma, they can make such a strong impact on your life. And that's definitely the case with my grandma too. She was one of those people where she wasn't out and about in the community, but she was making such a difference in the lives of the people that she knew and that she cared about.
Yeah.
And that's what's important. That's what I see in you as well, is that type of spirit of community and just wanting to care for people. And so I have to commend you for that. So thank you again, Barb, for sitting down with me, and congratulations again on being nominated for Citizen of the Year. And thanks for sitting down with me.
You're welcome, and thank you for asking.
Of course.